Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Ksenia. I am an artist, gardener, and book lover. Today I will be sharing all the books I've read so far this year of Japanese literature. To be honest, I haven't read any Japanese literature since maybe high school. And that's very sad. I don't know how that happened, and I would really love more recommendations that are touching. Obviously, I can't read in Japanese because I don't know Japanese, but good translations, good short stories. I would love to have more recommendations because I have enjoyed so many of these a lot, and the unique perspective and the unique approach of crafting stories that is very different from, the American way or even the Russian stories I've read and many other cultures that I have read. I have somehow skipped over Japanese literature for many years, and that's regretful, but I'm planning on making up for it now. And in this video, I want to share the 6 books I've read this year, and I will rank them from best to least enjoyable. So I'll start with the most enjoyable one, and that is The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. Sorry if I don't pronounce them correctly. I do not know how to pronounce names. But this book, I just finished it, and I was like, wow, what a treat. For under 200 pages. It's just deceptively elegant. I agree with this review. This is one of those books written in such lucid, unpretentious language that reading it is like looking into a deep pool of clear water. Dive into Yoko Ogawa's world, and you will find yourself tugged by forces more felt than seen. This book is so full of empathy and universal themes like taking care of an elderly person, the relationship that can develop between elders and children, the bonds that can happen just doing the things we love together, and the beauty of mathematics. But this professor, he's a very interesting character who was in a car accident, and his memories started only lasting 80 minutes at the beginning of the book. Towards the end of the book, it starts lasting even less. And it's a sad book at times, but it's so elegant and so full of empathy for each of these characters and their paths through life, their paths through their own suffering. Because in a way, every suffering is unique. There is no experience that is the same. And this book captures that beautifully. The kind of strange professor is, I love him by the end of the book a lot. And I really liked how that peaceful was the highest compliment, and he would watch her preparing the food and really as absorbed as he was when he was doing his math problems, and he would just say how peaceful, how beautiful, and there was this really touching moment that really stood out to me about how he went to bed after they went to a game, and she starts talking to him like she would normally, and she's like, that always works when Root has a fever. Let's start setting by getting you something in your stomach. Let's do this. I'm sorry we tired you out. And this man is clueless, and he's just sad that he doesn't understand what's going on around him. And the quote goes on, before I'd finished, he pushed me away and turned his back. And as he did, I realized I had made the most basic mistakes. He no longer remembered the baseball game, or even who I was. He sat on the bed, staring down at his lap, his back more hunched over than it had been the day before. His tired body remained still. His mind wandered in a fog. All passion had deserted him, and even the affection he showed toward Root was gone. Root is the son of hers. A moment later, I realized he was sobbing quietly. At first, I couldn't tell where the sound was coming from. It sounded like the stuttering of a broken music box. These sobs were very different from the ones he'd cried when Root cut his hand They were private, desolate, and for no one other than himself. That moment and some of the other moments where they have these authentic connection, like human connection, no matter where you are in life and your struggles, it's very human and very beautiful, very elegant. There's a little bit more math than probably most people will get. I have a dad who's a math professor, but I could not follow everything. And even when I did follow it, I was like, okay, numbers, numbers, numbers. But the appeal of math as that order behind things and that beautiful pattern, I really did understand through this book. And I really love this quote. I remembered something the professor had said. The mathematical order is beautiful precisely because it has no effect on the real world. Life isn't going to be easier, nor is anyone going to make a fortune just because they know something about prime numbers. Of course, lots of mathematical discoveries have practical applications, no matter how esoteric they may seem. But these things aren't the goal of mathematics. The only goal is to discover the truth. And it goes on to talk about like dimensions and lines and how we try to conceptualize it, and but it's still all in here and not really describable, and it's beautiful. It made me think of art and how there is no real point in, a painting. Like, it has no practical use. I mean, you can use it as a tablecloth, but other than that, it doesn't really have a practical use. And that's not its value. But what it can give is that kind of connection to an universal truth of beauty, of connection, of what colors and combinations make us feel alive and feel emotion and really be present with the beauty. It made me think of all those things as an artist, and I really enjoyed it. Oh, and last quote, sorry, just one more. In my imagination, I saw the creator of the universe sitting in some distant corner of the sky, weaving a pattern of delicate lace so fine that even the faintest light would shine through it. The lace stretches out infinitely in every direction, billowing gently in the cosmic breeze. You want desperately to touch it, to hold it up to the light, rub it against your cheek. And all we ask is to be able to recreate the pattern, weave it again with numbers, somehow in our own language, to make even the tiniest fragment our own, to bring it back to earth. As an artist, I was just like, that's what I want to do. With my art, I want to just really look at some beautiful instance and really touch it, really deeply hold it with me as a memory, as a feeling, and just tap into that like infinity of beauty and connection. So yes, this book, I would give it like 4.5, maybe 5 stars. Top book I read this year, Japanese literature. So the next book is, I actually read all the other books on my Kindle because I wasn't sure that I want a physical copy. So the next book that I really enjoyed, I've mentioned it before, is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. I know it's been pretty popular here on BookTube and other places, but this book was also such a treasure. Like, I gave it 4.5 stars, and it really made me laugh. It really made me think about this kind of normal that we have established in our society and how we try to put these cookie cutter formula on everyone, and anybody that doesn't want to fit into that formula is considered and given advice in this repetitive kind of annoying manner. Why are you a 30-year-old woman and you're not married? Why aren't you having kids? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? In a very like formulaic manner that's actually really boring, especially if you look at it from the side. But I thought it was funny, and the way she did it was just so smart and so amusing and so to the point. Like, if this convenience store woman, just wants to be a convenience store woman for the rest of her life because she enjoys the order and the system of it, because she can understand it, and or some other reason, like, who are we to judge her? Who are we to say, no, you should be living differently? That's for her to say. Okay, so the third book is also by Sayaka Murata. It's Earthlings. I found this book somewhat similar to the second one, to the first one, and I kind of expected there to be more of a difference. And I marginally liked it less than the previous book, but it was still good. It still covered, or, the idea of normalcy and how we should deal with it in an interesting, thought provoking way, I thought. So, the fourth book is Spring Garden by Tomoka Shibasaki. It was a shorter one. It was a story about this building that's going to get demolished and several occupants in it, and how one of the occupants, she actually is really fascinated by the building next door that is, much richer. It has all this beautiful tiling and decoration, and she really wants to get to know it intimately. And the relationship between her and the main narrator. And it's a story about loneliness in a way, but also it's a story about cities and how they evolve and the kind of beauty in buildings, their history, when they're occupied or when they're not occupied, the subtle differences in the feelings of a city as if it's a living organism. And there were a couple pages about that really stood out to me. And I was like, I will pay more attention to New York City the next time I visit. I will pay more attention to any city the next time I visit and try to understand a little bit of that backstory, to be walking the streets with more knowledge, with more of a platform to understand the place, like a living, breathing, working organism. I thought that was well executed. So the next book is Miss Ice Sandwich by Mieko Kawakami. It's also a short story. And I really loved the empathy in this story. One of the main characters, probably the main character, yeah, he's this young boy, and his perspective on certain things and his fascination with this sandwich woman because she's different is so full of innocence and beauty and a different perspective on how children, they just accept others for their differences without judging it. For her difference appearance is just interesting. For others, they're judging her as weird, and there's this incident where this guy even attacks her when she's doing her job. And also there was another instance where he's watching a movie with his classmate, and it's super violent and repetitive and boring to him. He's just like, okay, more violence, and he's looking at her and he doesn't understand, what does she find in this movie? And I'm like, wow, that's me. It was so relatable because I do not understand most movies or why they're interesting. They seem very repetitive, especially when they're violent and action based. They seem repetitive and without a depth and just loud. And I loved that episode in this part in this story about that. So yeah, this is 5. I still liked it, but would I reread it? No. Would I recommend it over many other books that I really love? No. And the last book that I didn't really like was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. The idea was of time travel, and you went to this cafe and you had a chance to sit in a specific chair and have coffee with someone from your past. And there were a couple other stipulations, but I thought that the idea was nice, but the execution was really sloppy, and there wasn't enough time to actually really start to care about any of the characters. And also, one of the reviewers I read observed that it felt more like a play because the author is actually a playwright. And once he said that, I was like, oh, that definitely makes sense, because I did not feel immersed in the setting. I did not feel as immersed in the characters and their emotions. It felt a bit emotionally sterile. And So I didn't like it. Like, I would not recommend it. I know there are people who enjoy it, and you're welcome to give it a try, but for me personally, I love emotional content, well thought out emotional contact and environment and attention to detail and really deep connections where the characters stay with you after the story's over. And here, like, I read it, I think a month ago, maybe a month and a half. I don't remember anything. I remember that some of the stories were sad, but I don't remember anything. Like, this book about the housekeeper and the professor is gonna stay with me for a while. It's the empathy and the individual character, like, emotional undertone will stay with me, you know? So, those are my personal opinions, my personal preferences. If you like this review, please let me know what you think. Please let me know which of these you have read or which you're planning to read. I really love reading the comments in this community. Don't forget, if you enjoy this video, please give me a like so that more people can see this video and possibly find my channel if it resonates with them. I hope you're having a lovely day, staying curious, reading a lot of different cultures. I definitely missed out when I stopped reading Japanese literature for no reason. I just forgot about it. It slipped my mind. Let's read different perspectives and share different perspectives with me. I really look forward to it. Until the next video, bye.